When 16-year-old Alex Johnson walked into his father's auto repair shop in Desert Springs, Colorado, wearing grease-stained jeans and carrying a worn toolbox, nobody expected what would happen next. Rebecca Kane, the ruthless CEO of Kane Aerospace Industries, had arrived with her team and a supposedly unfixable rocket engine, daring the small-town mechanics to diagnose what her best engineers couldn't solve. She smirked when Alex stepped forward, assuming the teenager would embarrass himself. But the moment Alex placed his hands on the engine and spoke his first words, every adult in that garage froze. What he revealed about the engine's malfunction would expose a conspiracy reaching the highest levels of government, transform a nobody into a national hero, and prove that sometimes the greatest expertise comes from the most unlikely places. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Desert Springs as Alex Johnson pushed through the heavy glass door of Johnson's Auto Repair. The familiar smell of motor oil and coffee hit him immediately, mixing with the sound of air tools and classic rock playing from Tony Ritchie's radio in the back bay. His father, Danny, had been up since 5:30 as usual, reviewing work orders and preparing for what he'd called an important visit from some corporate types. Alex set his toolbox down beside the coffee maker and poured himself a cup, black with 2 sugars, the way his grandfather had taught him years ago. At 16, Alex had been working in the shop since he could hold a wrench properly. His hands, already calloused and permanently stained with grease, told the story of countless hours spent learning the language of engines, transmissions, and hydraulic systems. While other kids his age were playing video games or scrolling through social media, Alex found peace in the mechanical precision of automotive repair. "You're early," Danny Johnson called from beneath the hood of a 2018 Ford pickup. His voice carried the slight rasp of a man who'd spent 30 years breathing in exhaust fumes and metal dust. "Thought you had that physics test today?" "Finished." "Yesterday," Alex replied, rolling up his sleeves. "Mrs. Martinez let me take it early since I helped her fix the overhead projector in her classroom." He paused, studying his father's posture. Danny's shoulders were tense, and he was cleaning his hands more thoroughly than usual. "Dad, you nervous about something?" Danny emerged from under the hood, wiping his hands on a red shop rag that had seen better days. At 44, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who'd built his reputation one satisfied customer at a time. His shop might not have the flashy equipment of the big chain stores, but it had something more valuable: trust. In Desert Springs, when people needed their vehicles fixed right the first time, they came to Danny Johnson. "Kane Aerospace is sending some people over this morning," Danny said, avoiding his son's eyes. "They've got some kind of engine problem they want us to look at. Said their own engineers can't figure it out." Alex raised an eyebrow. Kane Aerospace was the largest employer in the region, a defense contractor that built rocket engines and satellite components for the military. Their facility sat on the outskirts of town, like a fortress, surrounded by security fences and warning signs. Most locals knew someone who worked there, but the company kept its operations strictly confidential. "Since when do aerospace companies bring rocket engines to auto shops?" Alex asked. "Since never," Tony Ritchie chimed in from across the garage. The 62-year-old veteran mechanic had worked alongside Danny for 15 years, and his Brooklyn accent still cut through conversations like a razor blade, despite decades in Colorado. "This whole thing smells fishy to me, Danny. Why would they come here when they've got million-dollar labs and computer diagnostics?" Danny shrugged, but Alex could see the concern in his father's weathered face. "Money's money, Tony, and they're paying triple our usual rate just to take a look." The conversation was interrupted by the low rumble of diesel engines outside. Through the large bay windows, Alex watched as a convoy of black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. The vehicles moved with military precision, parking in a perfect line facing the street. Car doors slammed in unison, and 8 people in expensive suits emerged, followed by a larger truck carrying what appeared to be heavy equipment covered by military-grade tarps. "Here we go," Danny muttered, straightening his work shirt and walking toward the front entrance. The first person through the door commanded attention without saying a word. Rebecca Kane stood 5'8" in her tailored charcoal suit and designer heels, her silver hair pulled back in a style that suggested both professionalism and ruthless efficiency. At 52, she'd built Kane Aerospace from a small government contractor into a billion-dollar defense conglomerate through a combination of technical innovation and political maneuvering that had made her both wealthy and feared. Behind her walked 6 engineers and technicians, each carrying tablets and diagnostic equipment that looked more advanced than anything Alex had ever seen. Their clothes were pristine, their expressions serious, and their movements suggested people accustomed to working in sterile, controlled environments. "Mr. Johnson," Rebecca said, extending a manicured hand toward Danny. Her voice carried the clipped precision of someone who valued efficiency over pleasantries. "I'm Rebecca Kane. We spoke on the phone." "Ma'am," Danny replied, shaking her hand firmly. "This is my shop, and these are my mechanics, Tony Ricci over there and my son Alex." Rebecca's eyes swept across the garage, taking in the organized chaos of a working auto repair shop. Her expression suggested mild disapproval, as if she were calculating the vast difference between her sterile corporate environment and this grease-stained reality. "We have a propulsion system that's exhibiting anomalous behavior," she said, gesturing toward the truck outside. "Our diagnostic equipment shows multiple system failures, but our engineers can't identify the root cause. We've run every test protocol in our database." "What kind of propulsion system?" Alex asked, stepping forward. Rebecca's attention snapped to him, and for the first time, her carefully controlled expression showed a flicker of surprise. She looked at Danny, then back at Alex, as if trying to determine whether the teenager's question was worth acknowledging. "It's a hybrid rocket engine," one of her engineers answered before Rebecca could respond. The man, who appeared to be in his 30s with thick glasses and a nervous energy, seemed eager to fill the silence. "Liquid oxygen and solid fuel combination designed for satellite deployment missions." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "What's the thrust-to-weight ratio?" The engineer blinked, clearly not expecting technical questions from a high school student in an auto repair shop. "Approximately 75.1 at sea level." "That's pretty standard for a first-stage booster," Alex said. "What kind of anomalous behavior are you seeing? Combustion instability, pressure oscillations, propellant feed issues?" The room fell silent. Rebecca Kane stared at Alex with newfound attention, while her team of engineers exchanged glances that ranged from surprise to mild embarrassment. Danny felt a familiar surge of pride mixed with protective concern. His son had always possessed an unusual gift for understanding mechanical systems, but this level of technical knowledge was impressive even by Alex's standards. "How does a 16-year-old auto mechanic know about rocket engine performance parameters?" Rebecca asked, her tone somewhere between curiosity and suspicion. "I read," Alex replied simply, "and I work on engines every day. The principles are the same whether you're dealing with a Chevy V8 or a liquid-fueled rocket. It's all about combustion, pressure, and controlled energy release." Rebecca studied him for a long moment, then made a decision that would change everything. "Bring it in," she called to her team outside. The next 20 minutes transformed the garage into something resembling a high-tech laboratory. Rebecca's technicians wheeled in equipment cases and diagnostic computers while a crane carefully lowered the rocket engine onto a specialized transport platform. The engine itself was smaller than Alex had expected, roughly the size of a large motorcycle engine, but its construction was unlike anything he'd ever seen. The combustion chamber was made from what appeared to be a specialized alloy, with cooling channels machined into the walls and a complex network of fuel injection ports. The nozzle was perfectly machined, its interior surface polished to a mirror finish. Every component suggested precision engineering and manufacturing costs that probably exceeded the annual budget of most small towns. "Beautiful," Alex whispered, approaching the engine with the reverence of someone who appreciated masterful engineering. "Don't touch anything," one of the engineers warned sharply. "This system cost $8 million to develop." Alex stopped, hands at his sides, but his eyes continued studying the engine's construction. After several minutes of silent observation, he asked, "What diagnostic data are you getting?" Rebecca nodded to her lead engineer, who pulled up a tablet display showing multiple error codes and system warnings. "Combustion chamber pressure is irregular, fuel flow rates are inconsistent, and the ignition timing is off by microseconds. But we can't find any physical defects or component failures." Alex studied the readout, his brow furrowed in concentration. The error patterns looked familiar, but not in the way he'd expected. After a few moments, he asked, "Can you show me the raw sensor data instead of the processed diagnostics?" "Why?" Rebecca asked. "Because sometimes the problem isn't what the computer tells you it is," Alex replied. "Sometimes the problem is the computer itself." The lead engineer looked skeptical, but pulled up a different screen showing streams of numerical data from various sensors. Alex studied the numbers for several minutes, occasionally asking questions about specific parameters or timing sequences. His questions demonstrated a level of understanding that made Rebecca's team increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, Alex stepped back and looked directly at Rebecca Kane. "Ma'am, I think I know what's wrong with your engine." "Really?" Rebecca's voice carried a mix of amusement and skepticism. "My team of aerospace engineers with advanced degrees and 20 years of experience can't figure it out, but you can?" "Yes, ma'am," Alex said quietly, "but you're not going to like what I have to tell you." The garage fell completely silent. Even the radio in the back bay seemed to lower its volume. Rebecca Kane stared at the teenager standing in front of her $8 million rocket engine, and something in his expression made her take him seriously for the first time. "Go ahead," she said. Alex took a deep breath, looked around the room at all the faces watching him, and spoke the words that would change everything. "This engine isn't malfunctioning. It's been deliberately sabotaged. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The word sabotage hung in the air like smoke from a backfiring engine. Rebecca Kane's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, disbelief, then something harder and more calculating. Her team of engineers shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances that suggested Alex had just crossed a line nobody was supposed to acknowledge. "That's a serious accusation," Rebecca said, her voice dropping to a tone that had intimidated senators and defense contractors. "Do you have any idea what you're suggesting?" Alex didn't flinch. "I'm suggesting that someone modified your engine's control systems to create artificial failures. The sensor readings show patterns that are too consistent to be random malfunctions." Dr. Richard Clark, Rebecca's lead engineer, stepped forward with barely contained frustration. "Young man, I've been designing rocket engines since before you were born. These systems undergo rigorous testing protocols. Sabotage is impossible, given our security measures. Then explain why the fuel injection timing is off by exactly 2.3 milliseconds on every ignition cycle," Alex replied calmly, and why the pressure oscillations follow a mathematical sequence instead of the random variations you'd see in actual component failure. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of traffic on Desert Springs' main street. Tony Ricci, who had been listening from his workbench, walked over and stood beside Alex, a gesture of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by anyone in the room. Danny Johnson felt his protective instincts kicking in. His son was clearly out of his depth in terms of corporate politics, but the technical analysis sounded solid. Over the years, Danny had learned to trust Alex's mechanical intuition, even when it seemed impossible. "Show me," Rebecca said finally. Alex approached the diagnostic tablet, his movements careful and deliberate. "Look at this data pattern," he said, pointing to a series of pressure readings. Every failure occurs at intervals that are mathematically related. Real mechanical failures are chaotic. They don't follow perfect mathematical progressions. He pulled up another screen showing ignition timing data. And here, the timing errors are consistent across multiple test cycles. If this was actual component wear or manufacturing defects, you'd see increasing degradation over time, not identical errors repeated exactly. Dr. Clark studied the data with growing concern. "I noticed some of these patterns during our analysis, but I attributed them to sensor calibration issues. Sensors don't calibrate themselves to create mathematical sequences," Alex said. "Someone programmed these failures into your control system." Rebecca Kane's expression had evolved from skepticism to something approaching alarm. "Assuming you're correct, and I'm not saying you are, who would have the access and expertise to do something like this?" "Someone with intimate knowledge of your systems," Alex replied. "Someone who understood exactly how to create convincing failures without actually damaging the hardware. This isn't random sabotage, it's sophisticated." The front door of the garage opened, and Jessica Martinez walked in carrying a stack of papers. Desert Springs High School's physics teacher often stopped by Johnson's auto repair to discuss technical problems with Alex, finding his intuitive understanding of mechanical systems invaluable for her lesson planning. "Sorry to interrupt," Jessica said, then stopped as she noticed the unusual gathering. "Oh, I didn't realize you had important visitors." "Mrs. Martinez," Alex said, grateful for the familiar face. "Actually, you might be able to help. Could you look at these data patterns and tell me what you see?" Jessica approached the tablet, her teacher's instincts immediately engaged. At 35, she'd spent 8 years trying to make physics relevant to teenagers who considered science abstract and boring. Alex Johnson was her best student precisely because he could see the real-world applications in everything they studied. After examining the data for several minutes, Jessica looked up with a troubled expression. "These patterns are definitely artificial. The mathematical relationships are too clean to occur naturally." She paused, glancing around the room. "What kind of system is this data from?" "A rocket engine," Alex said simply. Jessica's eyebrows shot up. "A rocket engine? And you think someone deliberately programmed it to malfunction?" "That's exactly what I think." Rebecca Kane had been watching this exchange with growing unease. A high school physics teacher confirming her teenage students' analysis made the situation significantly more credible and more dangerous. "Everyone needs to stop talking," Rebecca said sharply. "This conversation involves classified defense, technology and national security implications. Mrs. Martinez, I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately." "Actually, you can't do that," Danny Johnson interjected quietly. "This is my shop and Mrs. Martinez is welcome here." The tension in the room ratcheted up several levels. Rebecca Kane was accustomed to having her authority respected without question, particularly when invoking national security. Finding herself in a small-town auto repair shop where her corporate power meant nothing was clearly an uncomfortable experience. "Mr. Johnson," Rebecca said, her voice carrying a warning edge, "you don't understand the sensitive nature of what we're dealing with here." "I understand that my son just identified a problem your expensive engineers missed," Danny replied evenly. "And I understand that you came to us for help, not the other way around." Alex sensed the adult conversation spinning toward conflict and decided to redirect everyone's attention. "Mrs. Kane, can I ask you something?" Rebecca turned toward him, clearly preferring to deal with technical questions rather than territorial disputes. "What? How many people have access to your engine control systems?" "Very few. Maybe a dozen engineers and technicians with the appropriate clearance levels." "And how many of those people would be capable of creating these specific modifications?" Rebecca considered the question carefully. "Perhaps 3 or 4 individuals have the necessary expertise." "Then you have a very short list of suspects," Alex said. "Someone with high-level access and advanced technical knowledge deliberately compromised your systems. The question is why?" Dr. Clark had been studying the diagnostic data with renewed intensity. If Alex is right about this being intentional sabotage, then someone wanted this engine to fail during testing. But why would anyone inside Kane Aerospace want to sabotage our own systems? "Maybe they don't work for Kane Aerospace," Jessica suggested quietly. The room fell silent again as the implications of her statement sank in. Industrial espionage was a constant concern in the defense contracting world, but the idea that foreign agents might have infiltrated Kane Aerospace's most sensitive programs was genuinely frightening. "This is getting way beyond what we can handle." "Here," Tony Ricci said from his workbench. "Danny, maybe we should—" He was interrupted by the sound of vehicles pulling into the parking lot. Through the bay windows, everyone could see 3 black sedans with government license plates. Men in dark suits were already getting out, moving with the purposeful efficiency of federal agents. "Did you call someone?" Danny asked Rebecca. "No," she replied, her face pale. "Our protocols require immediate notification of potential security breaches, but I haven't made any calls yet." Alex walked to the window and watched as 6 agents approached the garage. Their body language suggested they weren't here for a casual conversation. "Mrs. Kane, I think someone else knew about this problem before we did." "What do you mean?" "I mean, whoever sabotaged your engine probably has people watching to see if anyone figured it out. And we just did." The lead agent reached the front door and knocked firmly. Danny exchanged glances with his son, then walked over to answer it. "Mr. Johnson, I'm Agent Karen Phillips, FBI. We need to speak with everyone in this building immediately." Agent Phillips was a woman in her early 40s with short brown hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone accustomed to taking charge of complicated situations. Behind her, 5 other agents spread out around the garage's perimeter, not threateningly, but with obvious tactical awareness. "What's this about?" Danny asked. "We received intelligence suggesting that classified defense technology might be at risk. We understand that Kane Aerospace brought sensitive materials to your facility." Rebecca Kane stepped forward, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. "Agent Phillips, I'm Rebecca Kane, CEO of Kane Aerospace Industries. We brought a propulsion system here for diagnostic analysis under appropriate security protocols." "Ma'am, our information suggests there may be a security breach involving your systems. We need to secure this location and interview everyone present." Alex felt his stomach drop. Less than an hour ago, he'd been a normal teenager helping his father in the auto repair shop. Now he was apparently at the center of a federal investigation involving rocket engines, sabotage, and national security. "Agent Phillips," he said quietly, "I think I might be able to help you understand what's happening here." The FBI agent turned her attention to him, her expression neutral but alert. "And you are?" Alex Johnson. I'm the one who identified the sabotage in the rocket engine. Agent Phillips studied him for a moment, clearly processing the unexpected information that a teenager had made, the discovery that brought federal agents to a small-town garage. "Tell me exactly what you found," she said. Alex took a deep breath and began explaining his analysis of the engine's diagnostic data. As he spoke, Agent Phillips asked increasingly sophisticated questions that demonstrated her own technical knowledge. Her team took notes and photographs, while Dr. Clark provided additional technical details. When Alex finished his explanation, Agent Phillips was quiet for several minutes, clearly thinking through the implications. "Mr. Johnson," she said finally, "your analysis suggests this sabotage was performed by someone with extensive inside knowledge and high-level access to Kane Aerospace's systems." "Yes, ma'am. That makes this investigation a matter of national security, which means everyone in this room is now involved in a federal case." The weight of those words settled over the garage like a heavy blanket. Alex looked around at the faces surrounding him. His father, Tony, Mrs. Martinez, Rebecca Kane, Dr. Clark, and 6 federal agents, and realized that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. "What happens now?" he asked Agent. Phillips smiled slightly, the first hint of warmth she'd shown since arriving. "Now we find out who's been playing games with America's defense systems, and you, Mr. Johnson, are going to help us do it." The transformation of Johnson's auto repair into a federal command center happened with startling efficiency. Within 30 minutes, Agent Phillips' team had established secure communications, cordoned off the building, and begun photographing every piece of evidence. The rocket engine sat in the center of it all, like an expensive monument to corporate secrets and hidden agendas. Alex found himself seated at his father's desk, answering questions from Agent Phillips while a technician recorded their conversation. The surreal nature of the situation hadn't fully hit him yet. He kept expecting to wake up and find this was all some elaborate dream brought on by too much late-night studying. "Walk me through your educational background," Agent Phillips said, her pen poised over a legal pad. "Where did you learn about rocket propulsion systems?" "Mostly from books and online resources," Alex replied. "My dad's been teaching me about engines since I was 8, and I got curious about how the same principles applied to different types of propulsion. I've read everything I could find about aerospace engineering. Self-taught. Mostly, Mrs. Martinez helped with the physics and mathematics. She's been encouraging me to apply to engineering programs." Agent Phillips made notes, then looked up with genuine curiosity. "Most 16-year-olds aren't reading aerospace engineering textbooks in their spare time," Alex shrugged. "Most 16-year-olds don't find engines as interesting as I do." Across the garage, Rebecca Kane was having a considerably less pleasant conversation with another agent. Her carefully controlled corporate demeanor was showing cracks as the implications of Alex's discovery became clear. If someone inside Kane Aerospace had indeed sabotaged their own systems, the ramifications would extend far beyond technical problems. "Agent Morrison, I need you to understand that Kane Aerospace has been a trusted defense contractor for over 2 decades, Rebecca said, her voice tight with frustration. "Our security protocols are rigorous. Industrial espionage is simply not possible given our safeguards." Agent Morrison, a tall man with graying hair and the patient expression of someone who'd heard similar claims many times before, consulted his notes. "Ma'am, according to our preliminary analysis, the sabotage had to come from someone with administrator-level access to your control systems. How many people have that level of clearance?" Rebecca hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the questioning. 4 individuals currently have administrator access. Myself, Dr. Clark, our head of security, Jim Kozloff, and our chief systems engineer, Dr. Michelle Brooks. We'll need to interview all of them immediately. Dr. Brooks is currently on assignment. At our facility in Colorado Springs. She's been working on classified projects for the past 6 months. Agent Morrison's expression sharpened. What kind of classified projects? I can't discuss that without proper authorization. You'll need to coordinate with the Department of Defense. Danny Johnson watched these conversations from his position near the coffee maker, feeling increasingly like a spectator at his own business. Tony Ricci had retreated to his workbench, methodically organizing tools while keeping one ear on the federal agents' discussions. The veteran mechanic had served in Vietnam and understood that when government people started asking questions, ordinary citizens were wise to keep quiet and stay out of the way. Jessica Martinez sat in the customer waiting area, grading papers and trying to process what she'd witnessed. As an educator, she'd always believed in Alex's potential, but seeing him interact as an equal with federal agents and aerospace engineers was both thrilling and concerning. She wondered if she should call Alex's mother, but Agent Phillips had requested that nobody make phone calls until the initial interviews were complete. Dr. Clark approached Alex's desk, his earlier skepticism replaced by professional respect, mixed with obvious worry. Alex, I owe you an apology. Your analysis was correct, and I should have taken it seriously from the beginning. It's okay, Dr. Clark. I know how it must have looked. No, it's not okay. Pride and assumptions can be dangerous in our field. He paused, glancing around to make sure he wasn't interrupting the FBI interview. Can I ask you something technical? Agent Phillips nodded her permission, clearly interested in the continuation of Alex's technical insights. You mentioned that the sabotage created artificial failures without damaging the hardware, Dr. Clark said. That suggests someone who understood our systems well enough to know exactly where to intervene. Do you have any theories about the methodology? Alex considered the question carefully. Based on the data patterns, I think someone inserted malicious code into the engine's control firmware. The modifications were subtle. They wouldn't show up in standard diagnostic routines, but they would cause the engine to perform unreliably. During actual operation, that's a sophisticated attack, Agent Phillips observed, not something an amateur could accomplish. Definitely not, Alex agreed. Whoever did this had intimate knowledge of Kane Aerospace's programming architecture and access to proprietary development tools. Dr. Clark's face went pale. Alex, what you're describing would require source code access and development environment credentials. Only our most senior engineers have that level of system access. The implications of his statement settled over everyone within earshot. If Alex's analysis was correct, and if Dr. Clark's assessment of the required access levels was accurate, then the sabotage had definitely come from within Kane Aerospace's most trusted inner circle. Rebecca Kane, who had been listening to this technical discussion while continuing her own interview, suddenly stood up. Agent Morrison, I need to make an urgent phone call to our head of security. If what they're discussing is accurate, we may have additional security concerns. Ma'am, I understand your concern, but we need to control information flow during this investigation. What specific additional concerns are you worried about? Rebecca looked around the garage, her eyes stopping on Alex, then on the rocket engine, then on the federal agents who had transformed her routine diagnostic consultation into a national security investigation. If someone inside our organization has been sabotaging our systems, they know we brought this engine here for analysis. They know we discovered the problem. And they know that this young man identified what our own engineers missed. Agent Phillips looked up from her interview notes. You think Alex might be in danger? I think everyone involved in this discovery might be in danger. Industrial espionage at this level typically involves foreign intelligence services or organized criminal networks. People who play at that level don't hesitate to eliminate witnesses or threats. The garage fell uncomfortably quiet. Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert morning air. In the space of 2 hours, he'd gone from anonymity to being a potential target of international criminals. Danny Johnson stepped forward, his protective instincts fully engaged. "Agent Phillips, what kind of protection are we talking about here?" "That depends on the scope of the threat," she replied honestly. "If Ms. Kane is correct about the level of sophisticated actors involved, we'll need to take precautions." Alex's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at the screen and saw an unfamiliar number with a message that made his blood run cold. "Stop asking questions about things that don't concern you." He showed the screen to Agent Phillips, who immediately called over one of her technicians. "I need this phone analyzed and the message traced immediately." "There's more," Alex said quietly, opening his recent messages. "I got 3 more texts in the past hour, all from different numbers. The messages were variations on the same theme. Warnings to keep quiet, suggestions that he was in over his head, and veiled threats about the consequences of continued involvement." Agent Phillips photographed each message while her technician began working on electronic traces. "This confirms that someone is monitoring our activities," she said grimly. "Alex, I'm going to assign protection to you and your family immediately. Rebecca." Kane was now pacing the length of the garage, her corporate composure completely abandoned. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Whoever orchestrated this sabotage has been watching and waiting. They knew we'd eventually figure out the problem, and they're prepared to escalate." "Escalate how?" Danny asked. "However they need to in order to protect their operation," Agent Phillips answered. "Industrial espionage investigations often reveal much larger criminal enterprises. If Alex has stumbled onto something significant, the people responsible will view him as a threat to be eliminated." Tony Ricci looked up from his workbench, his weathered face showing the kind of concern that came from personal experience with dangerous situations. "Danny, maybe Alex should stay somewhere else for a while until this gets sorted out." "He's not going anywhere," Danny said firmly. "If my son's in danger, he stays where I can protect him." Agent Phillips shook her head. "Mr. Johnson, I appreciate your feelings, but this isn't the kind of threat that can be handled with personal protection. We're talking about professional operators with significant resources." Alex's phone buzzed again. This time the message was longer and more specific. "The boy has seen too much. Some problems require permanent solutions. Consider this your final warning." Agent Phillips read the message and immediately activated her radio. "Control, this is Phillips. We have credible threats against a civilian witness. I need immediate protection detail and safe house coordination." The response crackled through her earpiece. "Phillips, we have additional intelligence on your situation. Higher-ups want everyone involved moved to secure location immediately. Transport is en route." Alex looked around the garage that had been his second home for most of his life, at the familiar tools and equipment, at his father's worried face and Tony's protective stance. In the space of one morning, his entire world had changed. He was no longer just a mechanic's son with an unusual talent for understanding engines. He was now a witness to something much larger and more dangerous than anyone had initially realized. And judging by the increasingly urgent radio chatter from Agent Phillips's team, the situation was about to get much worse. The convoy of armored vehicles that arrived at Johnson's auto repair looked like something from a military operation rather than a witness protection detail. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, followed by a specialized transport truck for the rocket engine, surrounded by motorcycle escorts from the Colorado State Police. Desert Springs had never seen anything like. Colonel Mark Stevens emerged from the lead vehicle, his bearing unmistakably military, despite wearing civilian clothes. At 58, the retired Air Force officer carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent decades making life and death decisions under pressure. His presence immediately changed the dynamic in the garage. "Agent Phillips," he said, extending his hand in greeting. I'm Colonel Stevens, Department of Defense Liaison. We've been monitoring this situation since your initial report. Colonel, I wasn't expecting military involvement so quickly. Ma'am, when classified rocket propulsion technology is compromised, especially with potential foreign intelligence implications, the Pentagon takes immediate interest. He looked around the garage, his eyes stopping on Alex. This is the young man who identified the sabotage. Alex felt suddenly self-conscious under the colonel's scrutiny. Military officers had always commanded his respect, partially due to stories. His grandfather had told about World War II, and partially because of the inherent discipline and competence they represented. Yes, sir, Alex replied. I just noticed patterns in the diagnostic data that didn't seem right. Colonel Stevens studied him for a moment, then walked over to examine the rocket engine. His inspection was thorough and methodical, the kind of detailed assessment that spoke to extensive technical background. After several minutes, he turned back to the group. Son, what you identified here goes beyond simple sabotage. This appears to be part of a systematic intelligence operation designed to compromise our defense capabilities. I don't understand, sir. Someone has been deliberately causing failures in our rocket systems, probably to gather intelligence about our response protocols and backup systems. When we can't get our satellites into orbit reliably, it affects everything from military communications to GPS navigation. Agent Phillips consulted her tablet. Colonel, we've been analyzing the threat messages sent to Alex's phone. The sophistication suggests professional intelligence operatives, not common criminals. That's consistent with our assessment, Colonel, Stevens replied. This morning's events have likely accelerated their timeline. They know we've discovered their operation, which means they'll be moving to protect their assets and eliminate witnesses. Danny Johnson had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm. Colonel, are you saying my son is in danger from foreign spies? Mr. Johnson, I'm saying your son has inadvertently uncovered an intelligence operation that probably took years to establish. The people responsible won't hesitate to use violence to protect it. Jessica Martinez, who had been quiet during most of the federal investigation, suddenly spoke up. Alex, maybe you should tell them about the other engines. Everyone turned to look at her, then at Alex, who appeared confused by her statement. What? Other engines? Agent Phillips asked. I don't know what she means, Alex said, looking at his teacher. Jessica pulled out her phone and showed Alex a photograph. Remember last month when you helped me understand the physics problem about orbital mechanics? You mentioned that you'd been reading about several recent satellite launch failures. Alex's eyes widened as he remembered the conversation. Oh, that. I'd been researching launch failures because I was curious about the technical causes. There have been an unusual number of propulsion system problems in the past year. Colonel Stevens leaned forward intently. How many failures, and from which contractors? Let me think, Alex said, closing his eyes to concentrate. Kane Aerospace had 2 failures in the past 6 months. Meridian Defense Systems had 3. Aurora Dynamics had 1 confirmed failure and 2 aborted launches due to engine anomalies. That's 6 different incidents across 3 major defense contractors, Agent Phillips observed, all involving propulsion systems. 8 incidents, Alex corrected. I also found reports of testing failures that didn't result in mission scrubs, but showed similar symptoms to what we saw today. The garage fell silent as the implications became clear. What they'd initially assumed was isolated sabotage at Kane Aerospace was apparently part of a much larger operation targeting the entire American space defense industry. Colonel Stevens activated a secure communication device. Pentagon Command, this is Stevens. We have a code-red intelligence situation. Initiate Operation Skywatch protocols immediately. Rebecca Kane, who had been unusually quiet during the military briefing, stepped forward with obvious distress. Colonel, if what Alex is suggesting is accurate, then our entire industry has been compromised. The economic and national security implications are staggering. Ma'am, that's exactly what we're facing. Someone has been systematically sabotaging America's space launch capabilities, and they've been doing it for months without detection. Tony Ricci emerged from his workbench carrying a thermos of coffee and wearing the expression of a man who'd seen enough military operations to recognize the gravity of the situation. Colonel, I served 2 tours in Vietnam. I know what it looks like when the enemy has been inside your perimeter for a long time. How bad is this? Bad enough that we're implementing emergency protocols, Colonel Stevens replied honestly. If our space defense capabilities have been compromised to this extent, it affects everything from missile defense to intelligence gathering. Alex's mind was racing as he processed the broader implications of his discovery. Colonel, if someone has been causing systematic failures across multiple contractors, they've probably been gathering intelligence about our entire space program. Exactly. They know our launch schedules, our backup systems, our response protocols, and our technical capabilities. From an intelligence perspective, it's a complete compromise. Agent Phillips received an urgent message on her secure device. Colonel, we have additional intelligence. NSA has been monitoring communications related to this operation. They're tracking increased chatter, suggesting immediate escalation. What kind of escalation? The kind that involves eliminating witnesses and destroying evidence. We need to move everyone to secure locations immediately. Danny Johnson had heard enough. Colonel, Agent Phillips, I understand the seriousness of this situation, but Alex is my son. I'm not letting him disappear into some government protection program without knowing what's happening. Mr. Johnson, I respect your concerns, but Alex has become a critical witness in a national security investigation. His safety requires professional protection. Then I go with him. Colonel Stevens considered this for a moment. That's not standard protocol. I don't care about your protocols, Danny said firmly. My son stays with me or he doesn't go anywhere. Alex looked between his father and the military officer, understanding that this decision would determine not just his immediate safety, but the future of his relationship with his family. The weight of adult responsibility was settling on his shoulders in ways he'd never experienced. Dad, he said quietly, maybe I should do what they think is best. Alex, you're 16 years old. You don't make decisions like this alone. But I'm the one who found the sabotage. I'm the one getting the threatening messages, and I'm the one who might be able to help figure out how extensive this operation is. Colonel Stevens watched this family discussion with obvious respect for both father and son. After a moment, he made a decision that would change everything. Mr. Johnson, what if I told you there was a way for your son to contribute to this investigation while remaining under your protection? I'd ask what you mean. I mean that Alex's unique ability to identify sabotage patterns could be invaluable in analyzing other compromised systems. Instead of hiding him away, we could put him to work helping us understand the full scope of this operation. Agent Phillips looked surprised. Colonel, using a civilian minor in an active intelligence investigation is highly irregular. So is having a 16-year-old discover a multi-year foreign intelligence operation that our best analysts missed, Colonel Stevens replied. Sometimes, irregular situations require irregular solutions. Alex felt a surge of excitement mixed with terror. The prospect of working on a real national security investigation was both thrilling and overwhelming. But the alternative, sitting in a safe house while other people tried to solve a puzzle he'd started, seemed worse. What exactly would I be doing? He asked. Analyzing data from other suspected sabotage incidents, looking for the same patterns you identified here, helping us understand how this operation works so we can stop it. Danny Johnson studied his son's face, seeing the mixture of fear and determination that had been there since Alex was old enough to tackle challenges beyond his apparent capabilities. If Alex does this, I want guarantees about his safety, and I want to be involved in any decisions about his participation. Agreed, Colonel Stevens said. But understand that once we begin this investigation, there's no going back. Alex will be a key witness in what may become the largest intelligence case in decades. Alex looked around the garage one more time, at the familiar tools and equipment, at his father's worried face and Tony's supportive nod, at the federal agents and military personnel who had transformed his quiet life into something from a spy. Novel. I'll do it, he said simply. The decision had been made. Alex Johnson, 16-year-old mechanic son from Desert Springs, Colorado, was about to become a crucial asset in a national security investigation that would test everything he thought he knew about loyalty, courage, and the price of doing what's right. The secure facility hidden beneath Cheyenne Mountain looked like something from a science fiction movie, but Alex quickly learned it was very real and very classified. The elevator descent had taken nearly 3 minutes, passing through multiple security checkpoints and blast doors that could withstand nuclear attack. Now he sat in a conference room surrounded by wall-mounted monitors displaying satellite feeds, intelligence reports, and technical data from defense contractors across the country. Dr. Michelle Brooks entered the room carrying a stack of classified files and wearing the exhausted expression of someone who'd been working around the clock. The Kane aerospace engineer looked different from what Alex had expected. Younger, more intense, with the kind of focused energy that suggested brilliant technical mind operating under extreme pressure. "Alex, I'm Dr. Brooks," she said, setting down the files and extending her hand. "I understand you're the one who identified the sabotage patterns in our rocket engine." "Yes, ma'am. Colonel Stevens said you've been analyzing similar problems at other contractors." Dr. Brooks opened one of the files and spread several technical documents across the conference table. "What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. You'll need to sign additional security agreements before we proceed." Agent Phillips, who had been coordinating with various government agencies throughout the morning, handed Alex a stack of legal documents. "These agreements bind you to secrecy about everything you see and hear during this investigation. Violation carries serious criminal penalties." Alex read through the documents carefully, understanding that his signature would fundamentally change his legal status from civilian witness to government contractor. The weight of adult responsibility was settling on him in ways that felt both exciting and terrifying. "I understand," he said, signing each document with careful deliberation. Dr. Brooks activated a large display screen and pulled up technical schematics from multiple aerospace companies. "Over the past 14 months, we've documented anomalies in propulsion systems across the entire defense industry. Until your discovery this morning, we assumed these were unrelated engineering problems." The screen showed a timeline of incidents: failed launches, aborted missions, testing anomalies, and unexplained performance degradations. The pattern was clear once displayed visually: a systematic campaign of sabotage that had been hidden within the normal statistical background of aerospace engineering challenges. "The sophistication is remarkable," Dr. Brooks continued. "Each incident was designed to look like natural component failure or manufacturing defect. No single company realized they were under attack because the sabotage was subtle enough to blend with expected failure rates." Alex studied the data with growing amazement. "Dr. Brooks, this represents years of preparation. Whoever planned this operation had to understand not just the technical systems, but the corporate culture and quality control processes of every major contractor." "Exactly. And that level of knowledge suggests insider access at multiple companies. Simultaneously, Colonel Stevens joined them at the conference table, carrying a secure tablet displaying additional intelligence reports. Alex, we've been analyzing the threat messages sent to your phone. The communication patterns suggest coordination between multiple intelligence cells, probably with foreign government backing. Which government? Alex asked. We're still working on that identification, but the operational sophistication points to a nation-state actor with significant technical capabilities and long-term strategic objectives. Dr. Brooks pulled up another screen showing satellite imagery of various aerospace facilities. The timing of these incidents correlates with specific military and intelligence operations. Whenever we've had critical satellite deployments or classified missions, there have been unexplained technical problems. Alex felt pieces of a massive puzzle clicking into place in his mind. They weren't just sabotaging our systems randomly. They were targeting specific missions to gather intelligence about our capabilities and responses. That's our assessment, Colonel Stevens confirmed. By causing controlled failures, they could observe our backup systems, emergency protocols, and technical workarounds. It's an intelligence goldmine disguised as industrial sabotage. Agent Phillips entered the conference room carrying additional files and wearing the grim expression of someone who just received very bad news. Colonel, we have a problem. NSA intercepted communications suggesting accelerated timeline for the operation. They know we've discovered their sabotage network. What kind of accelerated timeline? The kind that involves eliminating key witnesses and destroying evidence before we can fully understand the scope of their operation. Alex felt his stomach drop. Are you talking about me? Among others. Anyone who's been involved in identifying this sabotage is now considered a security threat by the people running this operation. Dr. Brooks looked up from her technical analysis with obvious concern. Agent Phillips, I've been analyzing compromised systems for months. Does that make me a target too? Dr. Brooks, your work has been critical to understanding this operation. That definitely makes you a high-value target. Colonel Stevens activated his secure communication device. Command, this is Stevens. We need immediate security protocols. For all personnel involved in Operation Skywatch, threat level has escalated to active elimination. The response came through clearly. Stevens, we have multiple intelligence indicators suggesting coordinated action against investigation personnel. Recommend immediate relocation to maximum security facility. Alex looked around the conference room, at the classified documents and technical displays, at the serious faces of adults who dealt with national security threats for a living. 12 hours ago, his biggest concern had been passing his physics test. Now he was apparently a target for foreign intelligence operatives. Colonel, he said quietly, what happens to my family? My dad, Tony, Mrs. Martinez, they're all involved. In this, because of me, Alex, everyone who witnessed your discovery this morning is being moved to protective custody. Your father is being briefed at a secure facility near Colorado Springs. And after this investigation is over, Colonel Stevens and Agent Phillips exchanged glances that suggested they'd been discussing this question. That depends on how extensive this operation turns out to be, and whether we can identify and neutralize the people responsible. Dr. Brooks had been studying the technical data while listening to the security discussion. Alex, I need to show you something that might change how we approach this entire investigation. She pulled up a new screen, displaying code analysis from various sabotaged systems. The malicious software used in these attacks shares common programming signatures. It's not just coordinated, it's actually the same base code, modified for different target systems. Alex leaned forward to examine the programming details. Despite his focus on mechanical systems, he'd learned enough about software engineering to recognize the implications of what Dr. Brooks was showing him. "That means there's a central source for all these attacks," he said. "Someone created a master sabotage program and adapted it for different aerospace companies." "Exactly. And if we can trace the source code back to its origin, we might be able to identify the people running this operation." Agent Phillips had been monitoring secure communications throughout their discussion. "Dr. Brooks, Alex, we have a more immediate problem. Intelligence suggests there's going to be an attempt to eliminate key witnesses within the next 24 hours. "Here? At this facility?" Alex asked. "Possibly. Or they might target family members and associates to force cooperation from primary witnesses." The weight of endangering everyone he cared about hit Alex like a physical blow. His father, Tony, Mrs. Martinez, even Rebecca Kane, all of them were potentially in danger because he'd been curious enough to look closely at diagnostic data that didn't seem right. "Agent Phillips, is there a way to end this threat without putting everyone at risk?" "There might be. If we can identify the source of the sabotage network quickly enough, we could potentially neutralize the operation before they can eliminate witnesses." Dr. Brooks was already pulling up additional technical files. "Alex, your ability to identify patterns in diagnostic data might be exactly what we need to trace this network back to its source." Colonel Stevens studied the young man who'd become the center of a national security crisis. "Son, what we're asking you to do is extremely dangerous. You'd be working with our most sensitive intelligence while being actively hunted by professional operatives." Alex thought about his father's worried face, about Tony's protective instincts, about Mrs. Martinez's faith in his abilities. He thought about the rocket engine sitting in his family's garage this morning, and how a simple diagnostic question had unraveled what appeared to be a years-long intelligence operation. "Colonel, if I can help stop this, then that's what I should do." Even knowing the risks, Alex looked around the secure conference room at the classified documents and technical displays that represented his country's most sensitive secrets. Especially knowing the risks, the decision was made. Alex Johnson was no longer just a witness to sabotage. He was about to become the key to unraveling an intelligence operation that threatened America's entire space defense capability. And somewhere in the shadows, people were already moving to stop him. The breakthrough came at 3:17 in the morning, when Alex was analyzing his fourth consecutive hour of sabotage code patterns. Dr. Brooks had fallen asleep at her workstation, exhausted from days of round-the-clock investigation, while Agent Phillips coordinated security updates from multiple agencies. The secure facility hummed with the constant activity of a crisis response center, but Alex found the technical puzzle more engaging than exhausting. "Dr. Brooks," he said quietly, not wanting to startle her awake. "I think I found something important." She lifted her head from the stack of printouts she'd been using as a pillow, instantly alert despite her fatigue. "What kind of something?" Alex pointed to his computer screen, which displayed side-by-side code comparisons from different sabotaged systems. "Look at these timing algorithms. They're not just similar, they're identical down to the variable naming conventions." Dr. Brooks moved her chair closer to examine Alex's analysis. After several minutes of studying the code, her expression shifted from tired interest to sharp focus. "Alex, this is more than shared programming signatures. This is the same person writing code for systems at different companies." "That's what I thought. But look at this metadata embedded in the compiled versions." Alex highlighted several lines of code comments that most analysts would have ignored as routine programming documentation. But buried within the standard formatting were subtle patterns that suggested something much more significant. The timestamp sequences don't match the official development schedules from any of the affected companies, Alex continued. Someone was writing this code months before the systems were supposedly compromised. Dr. Brooks felt a chill of understanding. You're saying this sabotage was built into the systems during initial development, not added later through security breaches? Exactly, which means the sabotage came from someone inside the development teams at multiple companies, probably from the very beginning of these projects. Agent Phillips, who had been monitoring their conversation while coordinating with federal agencies, walked over to examine their findings. Are you suggesting we have a mole who's been working at multiple defense contractors simultaneously? Not exactly, Alex replied, pulling up additional analysis screens. I think we have someone who's been consulting for multiple companies, probably in a senior technical role that gave them access to core system architecture. Dr. Brooks was already accessing classified contractor databases through her secure terminal. Alex, if you're right about this, there should be employment records showing someone with access to all the compromised systems. They worked together. For the next hour, cross-referencing personnel records, consulting contracts, and technical access logs from Kane Aerospace, Meridian Defense Systems, and Aurora Dynamics. The pattern that emerged was both clear and deeply troubling. Here, Dr. Brooks said, pointing to a name that appeared in contract records for all three companies. Dr. Harrison Webb has been working as a senior systems consultant for every major defense contractor that's experienced sabotage incidents. Alex studied the personnel file that appeared on the screen. Dr. Webb was 46 years old, with advanced degrees in computer science and aerospace engineering from MIT and Stanford. His resume showed 20 years of experience with the most sensitive defense projects, along with security clearances at the highest levels. He has access to everything, Alex observed. Core programming architecture, system specifications, deployment schedules, even classified mission parameters. Agent Phillips was already activating secure communications to run background checks on Dr. Webb. If this is our saboteur, then we're dealing with someone who's been planning this operation for years and has intimate knowledge of our most sensitive programs. The response from federal databases came back within minutes, and the information was deeply concerning. Dr. Webb's financial records showed regular payments from offshore accounts that couldn't be traced to legitimate consulting work. His travel patterns included frequent trips to countries known for intelligence operations against the United States. Most troubling, his access logs showed him working on sensitive systems during times that corresponded exactly with the sabotage incidents. We found him, Dr. Brooks said grimly. But if he's been operating at this level for years, he's probably prepared for discovery. Colonel Stevens entered the conference room carrying urgent intelligence reports and wearing the expression of someone who'd just received very bad news. Dr. Brooks, Alex, we have an immediate crisis. Dr. Webb disappeared from his home in Colorado Springs 6 hours ago. His neighbors reported seeing him leave in a hurry with multiple suitcases. He knows we're on to him, Agent Phillips concluded. It gets worse. NSA intercepted communications suggesting Webb is planning to activate dormant sabotage code in critical satellite systems. If he succeeds, we could lose military communications and GPS navigation across the entire Western United States. Alex felt the weight of the situation crushing down on him. Colonel, can we stop the sabotage remotely? That's the problem. Webb designed these systems with multiple redundancies and security layers. Only someone with his level of access and knowledge could deactivate the sabotage code without triggering additional failures. Dr. Brooks was studying Webb's personnel file with growing alarm. Colonel, according to his access records, Webb has been involved in programming for our most critical defense satellites. If he activates coordinated sabotage across multiple systems simultaneously, the damage could be catastrophic. How catastrophic? Think nationwide GPS failure, military communication blackouts, and compromised missile defense systems. It would leave us essentially blind and deaf during a coordinated attack. Agent Phillips received an urgent message on her secure device. Colonel, we have additional intelligence. Webb is apparently trying to reach a private airfield outside Denver. If he escapes the country, we may never be able to undo the sabotage he's embedded in our systems. Alex had been listening to this discussion while continuing to analyze Webb's sabotage code. Something about the programming patterns bothered him, not just their sophistication, but their structure and logic flow. Agent Phillips, Colonel Stevens, he said quietly, I think I might be able to help stop Webb's sabotage, but I'll need access to the same systems he's been programming. Alex, those are classified defense systems with security protocols that take months to navigate, Dr. Brooks explained. Even with emergency authorization, the bureaucratic process alone would take weeks. What if we don't go through normal channels? Alex asked. What if we intercept Webb before he can activate the sabotage and force him to deactivate it himself? Colonel Stevens studied the teenager who'd uncovered the entire intelligence operation. Son, that would essentially be a field operation against a professional intelligence operative. It's extremely dangerous. More dangerous than letting him destroy our satellite defense systems. Agent Phillips was reviewing tactical options on her secure tablet. Colonel, if we can locate Webb before he reaches the airfield, we might be able to prevent both his escape and the activation of additional sabotage. That assumes we can find him in time. Colorado Springs to Denver provides multiple route options, and he's probably using counter-surveillance techniques. Alex had been studying geographical data on his computer screen while listening to their tactical discussion. What if we don't try to intercept him on the road? What if we wait for him at the airfield? He could use any number of private airports, Colonel Stevens pointed out. Maybe not, Alex replied, pulling up flight tracking data. If Webb is trying to leave the country with classified intelligence, he'll need a runway long enough for international flights and a facility that handles customs clearance for private aircraft. That limits his options significantly. Dr. Brooks was already accessing aviation databases through her security clearance. Alex is right. There are only 3 facilities within driving distance that meet those requirements. Agent Phillips consulted her tactical planning resources. We could position teams at all 3 locations, but if we guess wrong, Webb escapes and activates the sabotage. Alex continued studying the flight data, looking for patterns that might indicate Webb's destination. After several minutes of analysis, he found something that made his pulse quicken. I think I know which airfield he's using, he said, and I think I know how to stop him. Colonel Stevens leaned forward intently. Explain. Webb's sabotage code includes timing algorithms that correspond to specific satellite orbital periods. If he's planning to coordinate attacks across multiple systems, he'll need real-time access to satellite tracking data during the activation sequence, which means he'll need internet connectivity and clear sky visibility during a specific time window when the target satellites are properly positioned. That eliminates 2 of the 3 airfields due to geographical constraints. Dr. Brooks was following Alex's logic with growing excitement. And if we know which airfield he's using, and we know his timing requirements, we can predict exactly when and where he'll attempt to activate the sabotage. Agent Phillips was already coordinating with tactical teams. Colonel, if Alex is right, we have a narrow window to stop Webb and prevent a catastrophic attack on our defense systems. And if he's wrong? Alex looked around the secure conference room at the adults who'd trusted him with national security secrets and decisions that could affect millions of people. Then we'll have to deal with the sabotage after it's activated. but at least we'll know who's responsible and how the attacks work. Colonel Stevens made the decision that would determine the outcome of the entire operation. We intercept Webb at the airfield. Alex, you're coming with us in case we need technical expertise to deactivate the sabotage systems. The final confrontation was about to begin, and Alex Johnson, 16-year-old mechanic's son from Desert Springs, Colorado, was going to be right in the middle of it. The helicopter flight to Jefferson County Airport took 43 minutes through Colorado mountain passes that Alex had never seen from the air. Below them, the landscape shifted from desert scrubland to pine forests as they approached the private airfield that served wealthy clients seeking discreet international travel. Colonel Stevens sat across from Alex, reviewing tactical plans on a ruggedized tablet, while Agent Phillips coordinated with ground teams through encrypted radio channels. Alex, when we arrive at the airfield, your job is to stay with Dr. Brooks and provide technical support from a secure distance, Colonel Stevens said over the helicopter's engine noise. Under no circumstances are you to approach Dr. Webb directly. We're dealing with a professional intelligence operative who won't hesitate to use violence. Alex nodded, though part of him felt frustrated at being sidelined during the confrontation he'd helped orchestrate. Colonel, what if Webb has already activated some of the sabotage code? Will we be able to tell immediately? Dr. Brooks has monitoring equipment that should detect any unauthorized satellite communications. But if Webb succeeds in coordinating attacks across multiple systems, the effects will be obvious within minutes. Through the helicopter's window, Alex could see Jefferson County Airport approaching, a modest facility with 2 runways and a terminal building designed to accommodate private jets and corporate aircraft. Several vehicles were already positioned around the perimeter, including FBI tactical units and military personnel who'd arrived ahead of their helicopter. Agent Phillips finished her radio coordination and turned to address the team. Webb's vehicle was spotted entering the airport 20 minutes ago. He's currently in the terminal building, apparently waiting for an aircraft that's scheduled to arrive within the hour. Do we know the aircraft's destination? Alex asked. Flight. Plan shows Moscow, with a refueling stop in Iceland. If Webb reaches Russian territory, we'll never get him back. Dr. Brooks, who had been monitoring satellite communications throughout the flight, looked up from her equipment with alarm. Colonel, I'm detecting unusual activity in several defense satellite networks. Webb may have already begun preliminary activation sequences. Alex felt his stomach tighten. What kind of activity? Diagnostic queries and system tests that don't correspond to any scheduled maintenance. It looks like he's verifying his access to critical systems before implementing full sabotage protocols. The helicopter touched down at a staging area 300 yards from the airport terminal. Alex watched as Colonel Stevens' team moved with practiced efficiency, establishing a command post and coordinating with local law enforcement who'd cordoned off the surrounding area. Dr. Brooks, Alex, I need you to set up monitoring equipment. Here, Agent Phillips instructed, pointing to a mobile command vehicle. If Webb activates major sabotage during our approach, we need to know immediately. Alex helped Dr. Brooks connect her specialized equipment to military communication systems that could track satellite network activity in real time. The technical setup was more complex than anything he'd worked with before, but the underlying principles were familiar from his experience with automotive diagnostic systems. Alex, look at this, Dr. Brooks said, pointing to data streams flowing across multiple monitors. Webb is accessing satellite control systems systematically, probably running final verification checks before launching coordinated attacks. How long do we have before he can activate everything? Based on these access patterns, maybe 30 minutes. Once he begins the activation sequence, stopping him becomes exponentially more difficult. Colonel Stevens approached their monitoring station. while consulting tactical updates from his field teams. Dr. Brooks, can you determine which satellite systems Webb is preparing to compromise? It appears he's targeting GPS navigation, military communications, and missile defense tracking systems. If he succeeds in coordinating attacks across all 3 networks, the strategic implications are catastrophic. Alex studied the data patterns on their monitoring screens, noting similarities to the diagnostic anomalies he'd identified in the original rocket engine. Dr. Brooks, Webb's access sequence follows the same logical progression as the sabotage code we analyzed earlier. He's methodical, but he's also predictable. What do you mean? I mean, if we can anticipate his next system access, we might be able to intercept his commands before they execute. Dr. Brooks was already pulling up network architecture diagrams. Alex, if you're right about his predictable patterns, we could potentially block his sabotage attempts at the network level. Agent Phillips, who had been coordinating the tactical approach to the terminal building, rejoined their technical discussion. Dr. Brooks, how quickly could you implement network-level blocking? With Alex's help analyzing the patterns, maybe 15 minutes. But we'd need direct access to the satellite control networks, which requires authorization from the Pentagon. Colonel, Stevens was already activating secure communications. Pentagon Command, this is Stevens, requesting emergency authorization for defensive network intervention. We have an active sabotage attempt in progress against critical satellite systems. The response came through clearly. Stevens, authorization granted. NSA is providing technical support channels. Execute defensive protocols immediately. Alex felt a surge of adrenaline as he realized they were about to engage in electronic warfare against a sophisticated adversary. Dr. Brooks, what do you need me to do? Help me trace Webb's access patterns and predict his next targets. If we can anticipate his moves, we can potentially block them before they execute. They work together with intense focus, analyzing data streams and access logs, while Colonel Stevens' tactical teams prepared for the physical confrontation at the terminal building. Alex found himself applying the same pattern recognition skills he'd used on the rocket engine, but now on a much larger and more complex scale. There, Alex said, pointing to a specific sequence of network access attempts. Webb is following a systematic progression through defense satellite networks. If the pattern holds, his next target will be the GPS constellation control systems. Dr. Brooks was already implementing blocking protocols. I can intercept his access attempts, but only if we maintain real-time monitoring of his activity. Through the command vehicle's windows, Alex could see Colonel Stevens' team moving toward the terminal building. The confrontation was about to begin, and their technical countermeasures would determine whether Webb could activate his sabotage, even if captured. Alex, I need you to watch for any deviation from the predicted access patterns, Dr. Brooks said. If Webb realizes we're blocking his attempts, he may try alternative attack vectors. What if he has backup sabotage systems we haven't identified? Then we'll have to deal with those as they appear. Right now, we're playing defense against an opponent who's had years to prepare. Alex focused on the data streams with complete concentration, looking for subtle changes that might indicate Webb was adapting his strategy. The technical challenge was unlike anything he'd ever faced, but the fundamental approach remained the same. Understand the system, identify the anomalies, and predict the next move. Suddenly, alarm indicators began flashing across multiple monitoring screens. Webb had apparently realized his access attempts were being blocked and was now trying to activate emergency protocols that would bypass normal security systems. Dr. Brooks, he's switching to backup attack vectors, Alex said urgently. I see it. He's trying to trigger automatic system failures that would look like natural malfunctions. Just like the rocket engine sabotage. He's making the attacks look like normal system failures. Dr. Brooks was working frantically to implement new blocking protocols. "Alex, I need you to predict his next 3 access attempts. If I can get ahead of his strategy, we might be able to stop him completely." Alex studied Webb's access patterns with desperate intensity, looking for the logical progression that would reveal his tactical approach. After several minutes of analysis, he identified the sequence Webb was following. GPS constellation first, then military communications, then missile defense tracking, Alex said. "He's trying to create cascading failures that will overwhelm our ability to respond. Can you predict the specific timing?" Based on his access patterns, he'll attempt GPS sabotage in approximately 8 minutes, then communications 4 minutes later, then missile defense within 2 minutes after that. Dr. Brooks was already implementing preemptive blocking measures. "If you're right about the timing, we can intercept each attack before it executes." Through their radio communications, they could hear Colonel Stevens's team approaching the terminal building, where Webb was making his final preparations. The physical and electronic confrontations were converging toward a climax that would determine the success or failure of years of intelligence operations. "Alex," Dr. Brooks said quietly, "what we're doing right now may be the most important technical work either of us ever does." Alex nodded, understanding that the next few minutes would test everything he'd learned about patterns, systems, and the kind of analytical thinking that could protect his country from sophisticated attacks. 2. Final phase of the confrontation was about to begin. The confrontation at Jefferson County Airport unfolded with terrifying precision. Through the command vehicle's tactical communications, Alex could hear Colonel Stevens' team entering the terminal building, while he and Dr. Brooks fought their electronic battle against Webb's sabotage attempts. The GPS constellation attack had been blocked successfully, but Webb was adapting faster than they'd anticipated. "Alex, he's bypassing our network blocks by using administrative override codes," Dr. Brooks said, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards. "He has access levels we didn't account for." Alex studied the new attack patterns flowing across their monitors. Webb wasn't just activating predetermined sabotage. He was improvising in real time, using backup systems and alternative access paths they hadn't identified during their earlier analysis. "Dr. Brooks, look at this sequence," Alex said, pointing to a series of rapid-fire network access attempts. "He's not trying to sabotage individual systems anymore. He's trying to crash the entire network infrastructure that connects them. That's even worse than targeted sabotage. If he brings down the communication networks themselves, we won't be able to coordinate responses to any attacks." Through their radio communications, they heard Colonel Stevens' voice. "Target acquired. Dr. Webb is in the departure lounge with what appears to be a specialized laptop. He's not responding to commands to surrender." Agent Phillips's voice crackled through the radio. "Webb has activated some kind of automated program. Multiple warning lights on his equipment. Whatever he's doing, it's happening now." Alex felt panic rising as he watched their monitoring screens explode with alarm indicators. Webb had apparently triggered a coordinated attack across multiple satellite networks simultaneously, overwhelming their ability to block individual access attempts. "Dr. Brooks, we're losing this fight. He's got too many backup systems." "Not yet," she replied grimly, pulling up network architecture diagrams on her largest monitor. "Alex, if we can't stop his attacks individually, maybe we can isolate the networks he's targeting." "What do you mean?" "I mean we temporarily disconnect critical satellite systems from the internet entirely. It would stop Webb's attacks, but it would also shut down legitimate operations." Alex understood the implications immediately. That would blind our own defense systems too. Better temporarily blind than permanently compromised. Dr. Brooks was already implementing emergency disconnection protocols when their radio crackled, with urgent updates from the terminal building. "This is Stevens. Webb has barricaded himself in the departure lounge. He's got hostages, 3 airport employees. We cannot use aggressive tactics." Agent Phillips' response came immediately. "Colonel, whatever Webb is doing with that laptop, it's causing cascade failures across multiple defense networks. We may not have time for negotiation." Alex stared at their monitoring screens, watching. Defense systems fail in sequence, as Webb's automated attacks overwhelmed their protective measures. The GPS constellation was showing widespread anomalies. Military communications satellites were dropping offline, and missile defense tracking systems were reporting critical errors. "Dr. Brooks, what if we don't try to stop Webb's attacks?" "What if we trace them back to their source and attack his system directly?" She looked up from her keyboards with sudden interest. "You mean hack his laptop from here? If Webb's system is sending commands to our satellite networks, then there has to be a 2-way communication path. Maybe we can use that path to access his equipment." Dr. Brooks was already analyzing network traffic patterns. "Alex, that's brilliant. His laptop has to maintain constant communication with the satellite systems to coordinate the attacks. If we can trace those communication paths, we can potentially access his system and shut down the attacks from the source." They worked together with desperate intensity, tracing network connections and identifying the communication protocols Webb's system was using to coordinate its attacks. The technical challenge was unlike anything Alex had ever attempted, but the logic was similar to diagnosing complex automotive problems. Follow the connections, understand the system, find the weak point. "There," Alex said, highlighting a specific network pathway. "Webb's laptop is maintaining persistent connections to satellite control systems through encrypted channels. If we can break that encryption, we can potentially take control of his system remotely," Dr. Brooks finished. "But the encryption is military grade. Breaking it could take hours we don't have." Alex studied the encrypted communication streams, looking for patterns or vulnerabilities they could exploit. After several minutes of analysis, he noticed something unusual about the encryption protocols Webb was using. "Dr. Brooks, I don't think we need to break the encryption. I think we can exploit how Webb is using it." "Explain." "Look at these communication handshakes. Webb's system is using legitimate satellite access credentials to establish encrypted connections. If we can identify those credentials, we can potentially spoof his system and send conflicting commands," Dr. Brooks said, understanding Alex's strategy immediately. They began analyzing the authentication protocols Webb's laptop was using to access satellite systems. The process was complex and time-consuming, but Alex's pattern recognition skills proved invaluable in identifying the specific credential signatures Webb was using. Through their radio communications, they could hear the standoff at the terminal building continuing. Webb was apparently using the hostages as leverage to prevent tactical intervention, while his automated attacks continued degrading defense systems. "Stevens, this is Phillips. Satellite monitoring shows Webb's attacks are succeeding. We're losing critical defense capabilities every minute this continues. Phillips, negotiation isn't working. Webb knows we can't risk the hostages. He's buying time for his attacks to complete." Alex felt the weight of the situation crushing down on him. Innocent people were in danger because of decisions he'd helped make, and the country's defense systems were failing because he hadn't been able to stop Webb's sophisticated attacks quickly enough. "Dr. Brooks, I think I've identified Webb's access credentials," he said urgently. "If I'm right, we can send shutdown commands directly to his laptop." "Are you certain?" "If we guess wrong, we might trigger additional safeguards that make the situation worse." Alex studied the credential patterns one more time, applying the same analytical approach he'd used on the original rocket engine sabotage. The logic was consistent with everything they'd learned about Webb's methods and technical preferences. "I'm certain," he said. Dr. Brooks implemented Alex's credential analysis and began preparing shutdown commands that would be transmitted directly to Webb's laptop through the satellite communication networks he was using for his attacks. Alex, if this works, will essentially be turning Webb's own communication systems against him. And if it doesn't work, then we'll have to implement full network isolation and accept the temporary loss of our defense capabilities. Alex watched their monitoring screens as Dr. Brooks transmitted the shutdown commands through Webb's own communication channels. For several seconds, nothing appeared to change. Then suddenly, alarm indicators began clearing across multiple satellite networks as Webb's attacks stopped in mid-execution. Through their radio communications, they heard Colonel Stevens' voice. "Webb's laptop just shut down completely. He's attempting to restart it, but the system appears to be non-responsive." Agent Phillips' voice followed immediately. "Colonel, satellite systems are reporting normal operations. Whatever was attacking our networks just stopped." Alex felt a surge of relief mixed with exhaustion. "Dr. Brooks, did we actually stop him?" "It looks like it. Webb's automated attacks have ceased, and our satellite systems are returning to normal operation, but their celebration was interrupted by urgent radio traffic from the terminal building. This is Stevens. Webb has abandoned his laptop and is attempting to escape through the departure lounge. He's no longer maintaining control of the hostages. All units, Webb is mobile. Repeat, target is mobile and attempting to escape." Alex listened to the tactical communications as Colonel Stevens' team pursued Webb through the airport terminal. After months of investigation and hours of electronic warfare, the confrontation was coming down to a simple foot chase through an airport departure lounge. "Phillips, we have Webb cornered in the secure area near Gate 12. He's not armed, but he's refusing to surrender. Colonel, take him alive if possible. We need to know the full extent of his sabotage network and whether there are other operatives." The final confrontation lasted only minutes. Webb, realizing his escape routes were blocked and his electronic attacks had failed, finally surrendered to federal agents. The sophisticated intelligence operation that had taken years to develop was over. "Command, this is Stevens. We have Webb in custody. Repeat, primary target is secured." Alex slumped back in his chair, finally allowing himself to feel the exhaustion that had been building throughout their desperate technical battle. "Dr. Brooks, is it really over?" "The immediate crisis is over," she replied, "but analyzing Webb's complete sabotage network and identifying any remaining threats will take months of investigation." Agent Phillips's voice came through their radio. "Dr. Brooks, Alex, outstanding work on the electronic countermeasures. You literally saved our satellite defense systems." Alex looked around the command vehicle at the monitoring equipment that had been their battlefield for the past several hours. Less than 24 hours ago, he'd been a normal teenager in his father's auto repair shop. Now, he'd helped stop a sophisticated intelligence operation that threatened national security. "Dr. Brooks, what happens now? Now, we make sure this never happens again, and you, Alex Johnson, are going to play a major role in that effort." The crisis was over, but Alex's involvement in national security was just beginning. 3 weeks after the confrontation at Jefferson County Airport, Alex Johnson stood in the East Room of the White House wearing his first suit and trying not to fidget while the President of the United States prepared to address a gathering of defense officials, intelligence analysts, and aerospace engineers. The ceremony was classified, attended only by those with security clearances high enough to understand what had actually happened during those critical hours in Colorado. Danny Johnson sat in the front row beside Jessica Martinez, both of them wearing expressions of pride mixed with continued amazement at how dramatically their lives had changed. Tony Ricci had flown in from Desert Springs, uncomfortable in his dress uniform, but determined to witness his young friend receiving recognition for extraordinary service to his country. "Ladies and gentlemen," the president began, "we are here today to recognize individuals whose actions prevented what could have been the most devastating attack on our defense infrastructure in modern history. Their technical expertise, courage, and dedication exemplify the best of American ingenuity and patriotism." Alex listened to the formal presentation while his mind drifted back to that morning in his father's garage when Rebecca Kane had arrived with her supposedly unfixable rocket engine. The chain of events that followed seemed almost impossible. In retrospect, a 16-year-old mechanic's son uncovering a years-long intelligence operation and helping to stop a coordinated attack on America's satellite defense systems. Rebecca Kane herself was in attendance, having been cleared of any wrongdoing in the sabotage of her company's systems. Kane Aerospace had cooperated fully with the federal investigation and was now working with the Pentagon to develop enhanced security protocols for defense contractors. She'd personally recommended Alex for the recognition he was about to receive. Alex Johnson, the president continued, demonstrated exceptional analytical skills and technical expertise in identifying sophisticated sabotage that had evaded detection by our most advanced security systems. His pattern recognition abilities and mechanical intuition proved invaluable in stopping a coordinated attack that could have compromised our national defense capabilities. Dr. Michelle Brooks, who had become Alex's mentor and advocate within the defense establishment, smiled from her position among the Pentagon officials. She'd spent the past 3 weeks working with Alex to analyze the complete scope of Dr. Webb's sabotage network, identifying and neutralizing dozens of hidden vulnerabilities in aerospace systems across the country. Colonel Stevens approached the podium to provide additional context for Alex's contributions. "Mr. President, what makes Alex's achievements even more remarkable is that he accomplished this analysis using intuitive understanding of mechanical and electronic systems, combined with pattern recognition skills that exceeded those of trained intelligence analysts with decades of experience." The formal presentation continued with technical details about the investigation and its aftermath. Dr. Webb had been charged with espionage, conspiracy, and numerous violations of defense security protocols. His cooperation with federal investigators had revealed a network of foreign intelligence operations targeting American aerospace companies, leading to additional arrests and the identification of previously unknown security vulnerabilities. Agent Phillips, who had coordinated the tactical aspects of Webb's capture, stepped forward to present Alex with a commendation from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. "Alex, your contribution to this investigation exemplifies the kind of citizen involvement that makes our democracy stronger. You saw something that didn't seem right, you asked questions, and you persisted in finding answers even when the situation became dangerous." Alex accepted the commendation with genuine gratitude, though he remained somewhat overwhelmed by the formal recognition. In his mind, he'd simply done what seemed logical: analyze the available data, identify patterns, and work towards solutions. The fact that this approach had helped prevent a national security crisis still seemed surreal. After the formal ceremony, Alex found himself in a smaller reception room with the key participants in the investigation. The atmosphere was more relaxed, allowing for personal conversations that hadn't been possible during the intense crisis response 3 weeks earlier. "Alex," Rebecca Kane said, approaching him with a glass of punch and a serious expression, "I owe you an apology. When I arrived at your father's garage that morning, I was testing you, expecting you to fail, so I could prove that real engineering expertise couldn't be replaced by amateur intuition. You don't need to apologize, Mrs. Kane. I understand why. You were skeptical. What I don't understand is how you developed such sophisticated analytical skills without formal engineering education. Most of my senior engineers couldn't have identified the patterns you found in Webb's sabotage code. Alex considered her question carefully. I think it's because I learned to understand systems by working on them directly, not by studying theories about how they should work. When you spend enough time diagnosing actual problems, you develop intuition about what normal failure patterns look like versus what artificial problems look like. Dr. Brooks joined their conversation, carrying technical documents that represented the ongoing analysis of Webb's complete sabotage network. Alex, I have a proposition for you. The Pentagon is establishing a new program to identify and prevent sophisticated attacks on defense systems. We need analysts who can think differently, who can see patterns that traditional approaches might miss. What kind of program? A hybrid technical and intelligence analysis unit. You'd work with engineers, computer scientists, and intelligence analysts to identify vulnerabilities in defense systems before they can be exploited. The work would be classified, challenging, and absolutely critical to national security. Alex looked around the reception room at the adults who had become his colleagues and mentors during the most intense 3 weeks of his life. The opportunity Dr. Brooks was describing represented a complete change in his planned future. Instead of eventually taking over his father's auto repair shop, he'd be working at the highest levels of national security. Dr. Brooks, I'm honored by the offer, but I'm still in high school. I haven't even taken the SATs yet. Colonel Stevens, who had been listening to their conversation, stepped forward with a slight smile. Alex, the Pentagon has ways of accommodating exceptional circumstances. If you're interested in this opportunity, we can arrange for accelerated education programs that would prepare you for advanced technical work while maintaining appropriate academic credentials. Danny Johnson approached his son with the careful expression of a parent trying to balance pride, concern, and respect for his child's autonomy. Alex, this is your decision, but I want you to understand what you'd be choosing. This isn't just a job, it's a completely different life path. Alex studied his father's face, seeing the mixture of emotions there. Danny had always encouraged his son's technical interests and intellectual curiosity, but he'd also hoped that Alex might continue the family tradition of automotive repair and small-town business ownership. Dad, what do you think I should do? I think you should do whatever challenges you and makes you feel like you're contributing something important to the world. 3 weeks ago, you helped prevent a disaster that could have affected millions of people. If you can continue doing that kind of work, then maybe that's what you're meant to do. Jessica Martinez had been quietly observing the conversation from across the room. As Alex's teacher and mentor, she understood better than anyone the intellectual capabilities he'd demonstrated during the crisis. She approached the group with the perspective of an educator who'd watched her student exceed every expectation. Alex, she said, I've been teaching for 8 years, and I've never had a student who combined technical intuition with analytical thinking as effectively as you do. The opportunity Dr. Brooks is describing would challenge you in ways that traditional education simply couldn't. Tony Ritchie, who had remained characteristically quiet during the formal proceedings, finally spoke up with the practical wisdom of someone who'd seen both military service and civilian life. Kid, you've got a gift for understanding how things work and spotting when they don't work right. That's valuable in any field, but in national security, it could save lives. Alex felt the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. 3 weeks ago, his biggest concern had been passing his physics tests and helping his father in the auto repair shop. Now he was being offered an opportunity to work on the most sensitive technical challenges facing his country. Dr. Brooks, If I accepted this opportunity, would I be able to continue living in Desert Springs? My family and community are important to me. The work would require some travel and periodic relocation for training, but we understand the importance of maintaining personal connections. We'd work with you to balance professional responsibilities with family commitments. Alex looked around the reception room one more time, at the faces of people who had trusted him with extraordinary responsibilities and who were now offering him extraordinary opportunities. The decision would determine not just his career path, but the kind of person he would become. I accept, he said simply. The conversations that followed were practical and detailed. Discussions about educational requirements, security clearances, training programs, and the technical challenges Alex would face in his new role. But for Alex, the most important moment was when his father put a hand on his shoulder and said, "I'm proud of you, son." 6 months later, Alex Johnson was enrolled in an accelerated engineering program at the Colorado School of Mines, while also working part-time with the Pentagon's new Defense Systems Analysis Unit. He spent weekends at home in Desert Springs, helping his father in the auto repair shop and maintaining the connections that kept him grounded in the community that had shaped him. The rocket engine that had started everything was now displayed in a classified facility as a case study in sophisticated sabotage techniques. But for Alex, the real legacy of that morning in his father's garage wasn't the engine itself. It was the understanding that curiosity, persistence, and the willingness to ask difficult questions could lead to discoveries that changed everything. His story had become legend within the intelligence community. The teenager who looked at diagnostic data that didn't seem quite right and ended up uncovering a conspiracy that threatened national security. But Alex preferred to think of himself simply as someone who'd learned to listen to engines and trust his instincts about what they were trying to tell him. The skills that made him valuable in national security work were the same skills his father had taught him in a small-town auto repair shop. Pay attention to details, understand how systems work, and never stop asking questions when something doesn't seem right. In the end, that turned out to be exactly what his country needed. The end. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss this. Just click to watch, and don't forget to subscribe. It would mean a lot.